Okay, hello everybody, I am the Master974 back again doing a hammer tutorial. I know it's been a long time since I've done the previous one, and I got a private message saying that I should do more, so, or something to that effect at least, so that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. And as you might guess from the title, this is going to be demonstrating how to create the introduction clock as seen in a Portal. So what we're going to do is first of all create a basic room. For setup, let's create a prop dynamic. Oh god, breathing in the mic, that's never a good thing. Let's put it onto this wall left of the player. Gonna have to put my Steam controller down to sort this out. Gonna set the world model to clock as seen underneath the props folder, as you see right here, and just apply that. And what we're going to do as well is rotate the clock as well. Because it's on this wall, I've already sorted it out. You have to rotate it 90 in the Y and the Z to properly sort it out. So just get it so it's center and up against this wall here. So I got a burp as well, which is never nice. You don't want to hear that. Let's just switch to the no draw texture, and we're going to decrease the grid size. So left square bracket to decrease the size to about 2, because what we're going to be doing now is creating a 10 by 10 square. I think we might need to move it down to grid size of 1 to get this positioned perfectly, but we get a 10 by 10 and just decrease the size to around 2. Fit it, and so let's create it first so we actually see what it looks like. And we want to get it in the clock as well, so if we just shift that back a little bit and then just decrease the grid size down to 1, so we almost have it. Just got to move it out a little bit more, I guess, or move it up forward. Again, I'm kind of combining 2 steps in one in terms of getting the panel sort of positioned properly in advance. Or another guide would tell you, the guide I'm following would tell you to create the panel first and then move it into place, but I'm kind of combining a couple steps into one. Now what we're going to do is shift drag this square over to the right as seen in the side view. We're going to decrease this down to a size of 2 by 10, so it's a sort of like a vertical letterbox, vertical cuboid looking shape. And then while selecting both, we're just going to shift drag across 2 times across the panel, and then what we're going to do is take the final square, this square here, just shift drag that across as well, and as you should be able to see, it fits the clock panel as shown here. So now what we're going to do is we are going to texture each of the squares. So on the leftmost side it's going to be the minutes, so if we search for signage, then this where it says clock underscore minutes is going to be the leftmost texture. Then the next one along is the seconds, then the next one along is the centiseconds, and then the final one is the milliseconds as shown here. And then for each and every one of the no draw gaps that you see here, we're going to be placing the no draw. We're placing the no draw texture with the dots. And while we select the dots, so while we have the dots selected, we are going to change the scale to 0.10 as shown, and also click center so that the dots are positioned as shown. And then for each of the signage pieces, we're going to change the scale to 0.08, plus my headset's beeping, so I'm gonna have to just put a sound out real quick so my headset doesn't die. Center that as well, and let me keep my there we go. That's to save my headset from dying on me, because I haven't been there's no audio coming out of this, it's pure silence. So that is our panel sorted, and it should be as shown basically. So with this, so I just want to make sure I got yeah, it should be like this, okay? Because you set it to centered, it should have it should display the time correctly. And say if we go, oh yeah, I can't show you the valve map because reasons. But if I do show you the valve map, then how Valve have it set up is that it's 1 minute 59 seconds and 50 seconds. So if we go back to our map, then we should see that it should say 1 minute 59 seconds and 50 seconds. 1 minute 59 seconds 50 centiseconds. Sorry, 50 centiseconds. So that's how we know we've got the panel set up correctly. Now what we're going to do is create the entities. So basically what's going to happen here now is for each of the square panels, we are going to individually assign them to a func brush entity, which is just up here, and that's going to be each one of these. So you could just select all of them individually, like so, create all of them as a func detail, and then go up to where it's a func brush, and it individually creates them as a func brush. And then for each of the dots, just create a func detail. Otherwise you're going to end up with some pretty funky and unoptimized portal sort of lines in your map, which is not going to be very beneficial. It's unoptimized basically, so that sort of removes them from the portal building process in your level. And what we're going to do is we're going to name each one of them. So I should probably try my best to keep the clock, the properties, sorry, up at all times. So from left to right, we're going to call it clock underscore, I'm going to say minute in this middle part, and then just brush at the end. Apply that. Then this second one along, we're just going to select the first one, but instead of minute, we're going to call it second. And then the same for the last two, we're going to call this, we're going to select clock second, but this time we're going to put centi in front of it. And this end one, we're going to do exactly the same, but instead of centi, we're going to be putting milli as such. Now we are going to be dealing with a very complicated mishmash, if you will, of entities. So what we're going to create here, just to basically give you a list as of right now, we're going to be creating two env texture toggles. We are going to be creating two material modify controls. So let me just get those in for you. Two material modify controls. We are going to have 4 logic timers. So they're going to go like here. 4 logic timers. 2 math counters. Oh god, sorry for that. Breathing into the mic. 2 math counters. And 1 logic relay. And 1 logic auto. So that is a total of 60, well not 12, not 16, 12 sort of point entities. Now if you want to be a bit efficient about this, then what you can do is just select all of them, and kind of difficult to do when you have the Steam controller as well, trying to move around. Be very careful about what you're doing. Then go to tools, snap selected individually, and because I kind of placed them a bit irregularly, shall we say, they kind of do this and go a little all over the place. But I would say it's better to sort of, separate the texture toggles from the material modify controls. seeing as they're sort of different entities. To be honest, they're going to material modified controls are going to be more for the centiseconds and milliseconds as opposed to the minutes and the seconds. So let's name them again, trying to use the properties menu. First texture toggle is going to be called clock minute toggle, so that's what we're going to call it here, clock minute toggle. Second one is going to be called clock second toggle, so again just use the names already given and just change the end of it. Then material modified control 1 is going to be the clock centisecond mmc, because that stands for material modify control. And then the final one is the millisecond mmc, so just select that as well, change that to material modify control at the end. Now we're going to move on to the timers, so they should be kind of close to the texture toggles and the material modify controls, which we're going to name these clock minute timer. So go to here, change that to timer, then change the second one to second timer, and then centisecond and millisecond timers as well. So just go along and sort all these out. I could have done with grouping these a little better, to be honest, but that's what happens when you snap them to grid individually, is they kind of just don't go where you want them to. And you could rearrange them, but I'm a bit lazy, so I'm not going to. How unprofessional of someone giving a tutorial, eh? 13 minutes already and I've barely got to the meat of what we're supposed to be doing. So that's all the timers sorted out. Now we have to go to the math counters. Let's call this clock underscore counter. And then we're going to select the other counter and basically call this clock underscore counter, but this time we're going to add an underscore 2 after it. So it's the second counter. And the relay, we're going to call it clock underscore relay. And the logic auto we're not going to name because there's no parameter to set a name for a logic auto. And my headset's beeping again, so I have to do this again. Sorry for doing that twice in one video, and it's probably going to be 3 times in a video, to be honest. So here we go. We've got all the names sorted out. All we have to do now is deal with the inputs and outputs of the map. So, well, yeah, outputs mostly is what we're going to be dealing with. So for the logic auto, we're going to be using the on map spawn. So when the map loads, for the millisecond mmc, we are going to set a material var of 9. Then another on map spawn, we are going to have the centisecond mmc, set material var of 59. And also on map spawn, we are going to have the second toggle, set material var also, or no, sorry, set texture index rather to 59. So basically what this is doing is, for the brushes here, for the second, centisecond and millisecond, it's changing their look as the level spawns, so that it actually comes up as 0, 0, 0, 0 and 0, 0. So, and because the minute's automatically set to 0, 1, it makes it so it's basically 1 minute. Seeing that's the frame, if you will, of the sort of texture to make it look as 0, 0 effectively is what this is doing. So again, close the properties when I'm not supposed to. Go to the clock relay next. We've got to make sure that it's set to be enabled. So start disabled, set to no. And we're going to have on trigger. And we're going to make the minute timer enable. So let me just get that. We are also going to allow the second timer to enable as well. we are going to enable the centisecond timer. So come on, select the input. I've got to get that under control, and we are also going to let the millisecond timer to enable. But the exception here is that we are going to be enabling the millisecond timer 0.9 seconds after the rest. So that sort of basically causes the timer to count down, and the milliseconds are the ones that are going to be flickering really fast, so it's not going to make much of a difference. We won't really know basically what the time is going to be in milliseconds, because they flick through really fast. So sorry about that. Now what we're going to do is also select all of the timers. Again, I've got to learn to stop closing the properties down, but here we can collectively deal with all of the timers. So what we want to do is make all of them start disabled, so the clocks don't automatically start when the level initializes. Random time, no, and we want the refile interval to be 1 second, but the exception here is the very end one in the millisecond timer, where we want this to have a refile interval of 0.1 seconds, so you can just put 0.1 in there. And basically the guide I'm looking at, I could show you an image. Since I have a better video editing software, I could overlay an image at this point to show you that the image of this guide I'm following doesn't actually exist. So that's why I have the decompiled first level up, so that I can actually view what the timer outputs are, so that I can make this sort of tutorial complete for you guys. So what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to copy these outputs off of the official map, and then I'm going to select our map, and for the minutes timer what we're going to do is I'm going to paste them in and correct them. So basically that's the texture toggle for the minutes, so that's clock minute toggle, and timer minutes, that's the clock minute timer. So basically what this is doing is, as soon as this is triggered, as soon as this time is triggered, it's going to increment the texture index of the minute timer, so it's going to go to 0, 0, or the next frame basically in that minute sort of texture, because that's going to be made up in the multiple images basically. So we're going to change it from 0, 1 to 0, 0, and we're also going to disable the timer. That way it doesn't actually continue to increment the texture once the timer's done. So we don't want it to go to like 5 minutes or something when it's all counted down to 0. We want it to stop at 0. So we're going to disable that as soon as it's fired pretty much. Now back to the second timer. We are going to be adding another on timer output here to the second toggle, and again here we are going to increment the texture index, but on top of that we are actually going to, for the counters, add 1 for each of them. So you could just copy and paste the output and then just add _2 to the second, or the pasted output. So this is going sorry. That's what happens when you talk for 20 minutes and not take a break. I don't want to be wasting your time here. I want this to be helpful. So basically this is going to be making sure that counters are keeping on top of the time. So when the time's up, basically we're gonna just stop the clock. Basically is kind of what's going on with that. On the centisecond timer, what we're going to do is again another on timer output. This time we're going to the centisecond Mmc, and this time we're going to do something really complicated. It's called a start float lerp, and the parameter is going to be 0, 59, 1, 0. Now, the best guess I can have as to how this works is that it's sort of like, for the centiseconds, it's sort of like 1 minute 59 seconds, then 1 millisecond almost, and then that's kind of looking like the time, isn't it? But again, I have no idea what this actually does. All I know is that it makes it work, so that's got to have something to do with changing the texture of the centiseconds in some way. Again, I have no idea how it works. I'm not an expert in this sort of field, if you will. I just know that it works, so just that's what you do, that's what you set it as. And then moving on to the millisecond time MMC, the millisecond timer, we're going to use the millisecond MMC, and we are going to pretty much do the same thing, except for the parameter this time round, and they've got 0, 9, 0.1 and 1. Again, have no idea why that works, it just does, so that's what you want to set it as. And that's pretty much going to make the timer, the textures change when the timers are triggered. And bear in mind, this is happening on a 0.1 second base. It's just basically going to alternate between probably these sets of textures, most likely. I really don't know how that works, but it just does. And maybe someone in the comments below can actually explain how that works, but I really can't explain that to you. All I know is that it works because it works, so you just have to take my word for it. So now what we're going to do is move on to the counters. So again, with this, we can select both counters. Make sure it's start disabled is set to no, and the maximum legal value can be set to 60. I'll do this for both. We might change the second math counter maximum value, but at least we've changed the second one kind of like in advance. So what we need to do is just like change it. But here what we're going to do is say on hit max, what we're going to do is for the second toggle, we are going to set the texture index to 59, which is the 0, 0, like we did when we sorted out the sort of logic auto, I believe it was, when we did that, when we sorted that out. And we're also going to set the second timer to disable, so it doesn't repeat. It doesn't you know, remain active when the timer runs out after the 60 seconds that we're going to have it operational for. And moving on to the second counter, as I said, we will be changing the maximum legal value. Instead of 60, we're going to change it to 59. So 1 second less. And on this, in this circumstance, on hit max, we are going to change the centisecond timer and make it so that is disabled. And then on hit max as well, we're going to make the millisecond timer disabled, except we're going to have the millisecond timer disable 1 second later, so that the centiseconds stop first at 0, 0 once 59 seconds comes around, and then the milliseconds are going to stop 1 second after that. So once we have sorted all of this out, what we are going to do now is go back to the texture toggles and the material modify controls, sorting out the target brushes and stuff to that effect. So for the minute toggle, we are going to be using the minute brush, not the millisecond brush, because I never typed in the name enough to select minute brush. Then not the wall, the second toggle is going to be the second brush. Then it's where we get to the material modify controls where things get a little bit complicated. But the parent of the centisecond MMC is going to be the centisecond brush. The material to modify is going to be signage / clock _ centisecond s. So plural, it's plural, centiseconds, not centisecond. So that is relating to the texture that we have assigned the centisecond brush, which is this third one along, and because we're going to be changing the frame of it, we just put $frame, so it's going to be changing the images, changing between the images that is held in the centisecond sort of texture. And then obviously for the millisecond one, we're going to be pretty much doing the same thing. It's just that we're going to be replacing it with millisecond instead of centiseconds. So again, signage /clock /clock underscore milliseconds, and then we're going to change the material modifier to $frame again. And there we go. That's going to make the textures actually change now. And basically, that is our clock done and dusted. Done within half an hour as well. So kind of happy about that. So that is our clock. And if you want to, you can go ahead and save your level. Save your level while you do this. I must admit, I should have said that earlier. Make sure you save your level as you progress through this, otherwise you can lose all your progress and it can be very difficult to figure out where you left off in order to carry on. The only other thing to do now would be to demonstrate how we can go about duplicating this clock and having a second or possibly even more clocks included in our stage. Now, we can't just copy and paste the clock outright because the clock's not going to work right. I've tried it. Sometimes the clock timer doesn't even change. It sort of changes only when you look at the original clock and then look back. Or if you do a copy and paste special, then it only changes the seconds. It just doesn't work quite right if you do like a paste special, which you think making a paste special should make it work, but it actually doesn't. So hold on a minute. Okay, little edit here, nothing too bad, I hope. But what we're going to do is to create a second clock, we're just going to copy the model and the brushes. We're just going to copy and paste it, and what we're going to do is we are going to move it to the other side of the level, which is what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to move it and rotate it 180 degrees about the z-axis as shown, and then just snap that up to don't do that. That's changing the origin of the brush, which we don't want to do. I can't seem to snap this up against the wall for some reason, but bugged snapping mechanics, I guess you can say this is. No, it's because it's like 6.7 units. We're gonna have to go like really, go down to very small. So yeah, very small grid selection just to make it so it snaps to the wall. Don't worry, I didn't have this problem before. It's just the because I never selected the body and screen as is. But anyway, once we have this in a different position, what's going to happen is the texture toggles, as seen over here, are going to they're going to work on both clocks. So these texture toggles are going to work for the minutes and seconds on both of the clocks, but the material modify controls for the centiseconds and the milliseconds are not going to work. And that's why when I said there's going to be a ton of complications, like there's going to be the clock's not going to function properly, that's what's going to happen here. That's the case. So what we're going to do is, over on this second clock, we are going to change the name of the brushes here. So I've got to load up the properties again. Instead of clock centisecond brush, what we're going to do is we're going to call it clock 2 centisecond brush, and then this one is obviously going to be clock 2 millisecond brush, as shown here. And what we're going to do is we're going to create 2 more material modify controls, so we can just place them above the clock here. Doesn't really matter about positioning them and snapping them to the grid, because there's only like 2 here. But a nice little thing we can do here is that we can actually select the material modify controls over this side, and basically just copy and paste the setup, this time just naming it differently and changing the parent brush, and happy days. That's all we need to do. And then do the same for the millisecond modify control, and then just paste that over onto this one. Saves a lot of time, saves a lot of hassle, and pretty much this is what we're going to be doing to rectify the issue of not having 2 clocks working, by making it so 2 clocks work. So once we've got that done and dusted, I need to hit this again. I'm so sorry. Hate to do that so many times in one video. That's what you get for having no output sound through your headset. So blah 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 blah. Since I'm following the text guide I mentioned where the image didn't work, so basically what's going to happen is we're going to go down, 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 and under the centisecond timer, which is going to be this one, I believe, that we placed, the centisecond timer, what we're going to do is basically just copy and paste that entity, that output, sorry. Instead of clock, we're going to have clock 2. And the same is going to happen under the millisecond clock as well, the millisecond timer as well. Now if you just leave this, then what's going to happen is your second clock is going to count down to 0 before your first clock does, by about 1 second out. And to rectify this little issue, we have to go back to the logic auto right over here. That was a deliberate error on my behalf, I'm sorry. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste these 2 millisecond and centisecond outputs, and instead of pressing escape to close out of the logic output, I didn't do anything, stupid computer. Instead of the clock, centisecond and millisecond happening twice, we're just going to replace it with the clock 2. And so this automatically sets the correct texture for the clock as the level starts. And by following this, we have pretty much created a setup very similar to that of Portal 1, where you have the clocks counting down in unison, and it took a little over half an hour, I must admit. It is very complicated, a lot of inputs and outputs, and getting stuff to work pretty nasty, to be honest. It's why it's an intermediate tutorial, but yeah, that is pretty much very similar to how well, not pretty similar, pretty much exactly how Valve have made their clock setup in official Portal. So you know that this is actually going to work. And if you test your map, and I'll probably show gameplay of it around here, is that the clocks will count down so long as you have a trigger. Now what I'm going to do is demonstrate how you can use a trigger. So basically all you need to do is either use the console, like literally as the game loads up, you press the tilde, is it not the tilde button, the button below escape but above tab. You press that to load the developer console up. You put ent underscore fire space clock underscore relay, which is the relay that we used, and then you just put space again and then trigger, and that will cause the clocks to count down. Or you can set up a func button. You can set up a func button and have it so the output is when the button is pressed on pressed, then you have the clock relay triggered. So that is how you can get that to work. You can have it trigger through a trigger brush. There's multiple different ways you can get it triggered, but yeah, that's pretty much how you sort it out. All you really need to do to get it to work is have the clock relay triggered. And my throat's really hurting now because I've been talking for like 36 minutes, and that's not very nice. But if you have any problems, let me know. That you could probably follow the last step to create more than 2 clocks, and that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching. Before I die, because my voice is hurting right now, before I die, thanks for watching. Like if you found this helpful. Let me know if you have any problems. Let me know if there's any tutorials in particular you want me to do. And I'll see you next time for whatever it is that I do. So thanks for watching and see you next time.